I'm going to start with this guy right here. I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Vihan, pronouns he, him, from Arizona. Wants to talk about, the burden of proof, basically, from what I'm reading here. Is it right? You're on the line. Hi, how are you? Is it right to say Vihan? Is that how you pronounce it?
Vihan, yes.
Sweet. So, Vihan, what I've got here is on the call screen. It says, if atheists can hold the stance of not believing until there's evidence, is it reasonable for theists to hold the stance of believing until there's evidence that doesn't support God? Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit more? Because, as it's written here, I could talk about it, but I feel like there's more to it.
Yeah, so building off what I've heard from you from previous shows, using Roland as an example.
Yeah.
So if hypotheses if we fail to reject them, if the idea of God is a hypothesis, isn't it like I would accept this hypothesis until there's evidence that leads me to reject it, rather than saying, I have a disbelief until there's evidence in order to either not believe or confirm its non-existence or existence.
Yeah, so you're using all the language that you should be using, but I don't think you're using it in the right way. And here's why. When we talk about science, and we talk about exploring the universe in this way, one of the things that we rely on is the idea of uniformitarianism, which is it is, you could call it an assumption. We call it is the idea that the same laws of physics apply everywhere. And that is because we have yet to find anything that's any different than anywhere else ever. Like, there's no reason to throw that out. So when you talk about something like a God, you are talking about something that has powers that we've never seen before, that lives outside of space and time. What is that? That is a member of some supernatural order. Like, it's not just maybe there's this thing. It's maybe there's this thing with layers and layers and layers and layers of absurdity to it that all rely on stuff that we've never seen anywhere. And so, the reason why the roll in the magic closet goblin or the teapot on the other side of the moon or whatever other absurd thing is an applicable comparison is because they also rely on several layers of nonsense in order to get to this one conclusion. And you would need to go through all of those before you can say, all right, now I'm ready to test this hypothesis. So hypothesis doesn't just mean any random guess or thing ever. It is an educated guess or assumption that fits into one particular slot and can then be tested. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sort of.
Are you confusing
on the part when
if I may
presented
quickly? If I may quickly, are you conflating hypothesis with a scientific theory?
I don't believe so. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but a theory, to my understanding, is there is evidence. It's a general, overall agreed upon understanding in the community, while a hypothesis is more of it still requires testing and support to, make it a further understanding.
Well, that's sort of where I was going with this, is the difference is then if you're leading a hypothesis into the testing phase, then you wouldn't start with the acceptance or belief in the hypothesis like you would a scientific theory, would you? I mean, I think what I was hearing from you at the beginning was, well, wouldn't you hold to the hypothesis until it was disproven? But I don't think that's how we work. I think you come up with something that might work, and then you take it into the testing phase. That's something totally different, correct?
Like I said, the language he used was appropriate because we do say you don't ever accept a hypothesis, you fail to reject it. Meaning, I've tested every single way to try to disprove this, and I can't. Therefore, I'm going to move forward with it and see if we can develop it further. And so, educate
Forrest real fast. At the beginning of the process, though, if you come up with a possibility that you would like to test, would that be a hypothesis at the beginning, or is that a different thing?
Yeah, so coming up with the idea of maybe this is the thing, that's your hypothesis. And then you test it, and if you can't prove it wrong, then you would move forward with it. So like I said, the way he's using the language is fine. It's what you hit the nail on the head, Seth, when you're saying you're turning a hypothesis into like an assumption, into like, well, I can think of anything, and if I can't prove it wrong, then I have to assume it's right. And that's not really the same thing. Failing to reject a hypothesis is not the same thing as saying, I don't know for sure that there isn't, a monster in the closet. Therefore, I'm going to just go ahead and think that there probably is until I can find out. Like, that's not really the same. You're using, like, basically what you're talking about here is an unfalsifiable claim, as opposed to an actual hypothesis. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. That makes plenty of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any other questions or anything you also wanted to bring up?
No, that's it for now.
Okay, well then, can I ask you a question then?
Go ahead.
I have it listed here that you're a theist, that you believe in God. So, like, do you have a reason to believe? Or is it actually something like what you said, where it's just like, I don't have a good reason not to, therefore I'm going to go ahead and do it? Or do you actually have some evidence that you think is compelling?
No, I'm not a terribly religious person. It's more, I grew up with it. It's rooted in my family and friends. And I know it's important to people in my life. And I feel like if I question it, if I start to leave it, it could ruin some relationships I have. You know, like when I go to a Hindu temple, for example, like, I'm not there to really worship. I'm there to be with the Indian community, you know, socialize, eat, you know, my ethnic foods. It's more of a social thing than a personal belief. So, yeah.
I appreciate your honesty on that. I honestly think that's why the vast majority of people call themselves religious, not necessarily the potential social consequence, although those things come into play, but many people enjoy the ritual. That's why up to half of practicing Jews say they have doubts about or just absolutely reject the idea of a supernatural God, but they love the culture and the ritual and tradition. And for you, you enjoy the aesthetic. You like the framework for the human experience. You don't buy all of the supernatural type stuff. But what I would say is that keeping other people comfortable, I don't think is a great way to carve the path of one's life, because then you're living for them more than you are living for you. And I know you're weighing the cost benefit, but the truth is I think an authentic life is always worth living. So, you know, don't be religious because they are, and you don't want to ruffle feathers and you don't want to cause friction. If they're uncomfortable about your path, that says more about them than it says about you. And so I would wish for you an authentic life. You know, take the journey. And if it takes you to a religious answer, great. If it doesn't, great. Just get there on your terms and live your own life instead of living for others. That would be my encouragement.
Love that.
Sometimes, like, festivals or going to temple is my only way that I meet certain people in my community. And if I don't want to say abandon, that's not the right word, but if I slowly start to let go of that, I'm in turn letting go of these relationships. So,
man, you have hit on one of the biggest challenges we have as people are in a religious culture. I'm sorry, Forrest, forgive me. That's I could talk about it because I've been on a community kick for the longest time, talking about our needs as communal creatures. But anyway, I'll hand it over to you. But I do have thoughts when we're done with the call. Okay.
Oh no, I guarantee you are going to say something more insightful than I am, because you've actually had a deconstruction. So. Like I was just going to point out that, like, you know, religion is a part of culture, but it's not inseparable from culture. And like, I have a ton of religious family. I still go to Easter events. I still go to Christmas events. I still go to things like to be around them. They do their prayer. I, you know, play with the nieces and nephews and make them laugh doing science experiments and stuff like that. You can still participate in your culture without and in your family and your community without necessarily, you know, prostrating yourself. And so, like, that's just my thing. Maybe you have a stricter community than I grew up with, you know, who knows? But again, I was just going to encourage you to try to see if you can not participate in this. But I'm sure, again, Seth, you've actually deconstructed. You've actually been through that process. So what's that like? Tell us more about it.
Yeah, let's let our caller go, and then let's you and I, because I've got thoughts. Would that be all right, my friend?
Yeah.
Oh, you're very
Okay,
kind.
cool.
Thank
We don't
you
want to
very
keep you
much.
here to just listen to us ramble. Have an awesome
Yeah,
day,
yeah.
Vaughn. Thanks so much for calling in.
So I have
Thank
become
you.
convinced that the five main reasons people are inside a religion are family, geography, ritual, community, and comfort. Now, obviously, I think there are exceptions to this and there are additions, but it is fascinating to me the fear of what we call social death, how that fear locks people in and keeps them from going too far past these established boundaries. Because what if, and I get messages all the time, my wife might leave me and we raised our children religious. I'm an apostate. What happens if I lose custody of my kids? I had a college student, he was like 19. And he went to college, and go figure, he was introduced to new ideas and he found them more satisfactory. So he told his parents, I no longer believe. And they said to him, if you mention this atheism thing one more time, we're going to stop all of your college education. Meaning they held his future in their hands, not just emotional and familial blackmail, but financial blackmail that could impact the rest of his life negatively. And we see these consequences all the time. Will my boss fire me? Will I lose all my friends? I don't want to lose the people I care about. And these reinforcers are massive, massive reasons that a lot of people just can't quite take the next few steps. And part of that is our problem. We in the secular community have so much to offer. We have a shit ton to learn about community, about building communities. You know, we like to pride ourselves, well, it's all herding cats, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. But I'll tell you, if we're going to ask people to leave a social net and potentially lose the people who would walk away, and that's a real loss. That's something they would grieve and be afraid of. We have to be the net that they fall into. And that means we have to establish community alternatives where we're not doing it because we're religious, but because we are humans. And that's actually a better form of community. And so I think what I would like to see us, now that we're done, for the last how many years debunking the freaking book of Genesis, ad nauseum, I'd like to see us focus more as a movement on developing communities and creating the places for people to land as they are falling out of their faith.
I think that'd be great. It's like that is the big thing. Yesterday we got asked quite a bit about like, why do shows like this? And we talked a lot about how beliefs inform actions and how it's important to poke and prod at these beliefs and tear them apart. And if they were good, they'd stand up to scrutiny and so on and so on. But I think that's another huge part of it, is just giving people a place to feel safe. I've gotten so many calls and emails about, people saying like, I felt so alone until I found this show, and if people say what I'm thinking, and oh my gosh, I thought I was crazy, and like, and also, the first part of your story there about that person about going to college and finally being exposed to new ideas and new thoughts and things. I just put out a TikTok today. There's a guy named Rhett McLaughlin who, if he's he did Good Mythical Morning. He's a huge internet celebrity, and he deconstructed his religion a little while ago, deconverted from Christianity. He's now outspoken about being an atheist, and a part of his story that he was sharing was exactly that. He was looking for ways to learn about science and learn about religion in order to defend his faith. And in so doing, he actually learned all the arguments against his faith, and his faith fell apart. And it was a scary process. And I can't even tell you, it's a million people I've talked to. Every single atheist I know that came from a religious background, people on these shows have at least that chapter in their story. Everybody's story is a little bit different, but that chapter is part of almost every single one that I've ever heard. Is I was, like Matt says, I was trying to fulfill my obligation, 1 Peter 3:15, to give justification for my beliefs and reason for the hope that I have. And the more I tried to justify it, the more I couldn't. I wanted to go learn about evolution and the Big Bang so I could debunk them. And the more I learned about them, the more they made sense. I was challenged in my belief on God, so I tried to find all the best arguments for God, and there weren't any. And it fell apart. So, like, that's why I think, man, it's just this communication, education, outreach. It's so important for so many reasons. It helps make new atheists, and hopefully will help build community between us two.
True story. Those who know my story, please be patient with me. But there may be some who have not heard. Like, I came out of a hugely fundamentalist family. My mother and father were theologian level believers, hardcore. They honeymooned in Jerusalem so they could go and walk the steps of Jesus. That's how hardcore they were.
Romantic.
Christian school. Yeah, I know. Lovely. Christian school, Christian everything. Their worst nightmare was their son becoming an atheist, right? This gives me no pleasure. To see that this, and my father passed away recently, but even until his death, it was just disappointment and shame, and you're embarrassing the family, and we failed, and my apostasy and their religiosity, it really cost us the bulk of our relationship. And I, in that way, lost my family. Now, I get my privilege. It's not like I left Islam and somebody, issued a fatwa against me, but I did experience that familial blackmail and the loss of family in a very important way. I was speaking, I guess it's been 5 or 6 years. I want to say it was in Wichita, Kansas. And I did my speech and we did the Q&A, and some people familiar with my situation said, "How are things with your parents?" And I'm like, "Not great." No, I had to block them because they were sending me sermons. They couldn't observe boundaries. We don't speak, blah, blah, blah. And this lovely woman in her 60s came out to the lobby afterward. And she went up to me and she looked me in the eye and she said, "I just want you to know that if I was your mother, I would be so proud." And I just started, I bawled like a child. It just happened. And I just grabbed her and squeezed her and thanked her and thanked her and thanked her. And our paths have crossed since then. And, that is the type of family. I don't have my bio family in that way really much anymore. But the upside is because the people who understand the power and the necessity of human connection, they are my family. And when I travel the world, I have family. When I do shows like this and my own, I have family. I feel that sense of human connection. And, and it doesn't have all the baggage, the guilt and the shame and the conditions and the fears and the conspiracy and all the other stuff. It's just person to person. And man, I think the more of that we can do, because I know what a gift it was to me. It's something I'll never forget. And this woman has a permanent place in my heart. And I think we can do that for other people as well. That's a gift, the gift of humanity,
Absolutely. It's so important. So incredibly important.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jimmy Snow, executive producer of The Line, and the rumors are true. Forrest Valkai is, in fact, a hostage in my basement. If you would like to contribute to his freedom one day, you can do so by supporting us over on Patreon or becoming a channel member. There are specific tiers for specific shows or the channel at large. You can also send us super thanks. Those are great. You can like, comment, and subscribe. Also, fudge the algorithm. Go to one of these things. The algorithm doesn't matter. It thinks it knows you better than we do. Better than you do? I know you better. Hank. There's a bunch of people named Hank. I just freaked way out. Okay, go to one of these.